Welcome back to Civic Concord, a podcast where we share information, highlight important topics, and hear directly from people involved in town government. This is a Minuteman Media Network production. I'm here in the studio today to talk to Carmen Reiss, our town moderator. Good morning.
Good morning, Megan.
Thank you for being here. This is the podcast you were the very first guest on the Civic Concord podcast about a year ago to talk about the 2025 town meeting. And here we are to talk about 2026. So
great. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. So last year we talked about the role of the moderator. And this year, I think we should probably jump into what's new. So this will be your final town meeting as the moderator. What feels different this time around?
I suppose what's different since this is my last town meeting is that I'm really focused on facilitating the transition to our new moderator, who will be Carmen Reed, who's running unopposed. We're really lucky here in Concord to have an election cycle that allows a newly elected moderator to observe the preparation and conduct of one town meeting before they need to jump into it and take the helm themselves. And I was lucky to have my predecessor, Eric Van Loon, to walk me through the process. And I'm really delighted to do that for Carlin. And I'll continue to be a resource for Carlin in the future, as Eric Van Loon was for me. And Ned Perry, who was the prior moderator, was also a resource to me during my years as moderator. So it's
kind of teaching mode this year.
It's a teaching mode, and we really do work on preserving our institutional memory and trying to make these transitions in leadership as seamless as possible.
And so last year, I think we did some new things. We had the town meeting study committee that had some recommendations, and it was a different time of year because of the 250th. So building off of last year, are there any adjustments or refinements that we've made to prepare for the 2026 annual town meeting?
Well, we're really working on implementing our experience with a couple of the changes that we made last year and learning from our experience with those. And the first is a town meeting briefing book. And That last year was our first exercise with that, in which we tried to have all the materials, the motions, the background materials, the finance committee report, the consent calendar, just kind of soup to nuts, town meeting traditions and procedures, which is kind of a short handbook for citizens on how town meeting works. And we tried to have everyone, all that information in one book, go to households in advance of the meeting, and then instead of having a whole serial handout table.
The table of handouts has been reduced, and that used to be kind of an assembly line of brightly colored, loose paper.
Right, that people could drop or lose track of
and
or
receive
have trouble.
Day of.
Yes.
And so now it's a bound document or online, and people can have some time to sit with it and review the materials and kind of absorb it before they're going to discuss and debate
Exactly.
articles. Yeah, that's a huge help.
Exactly. And now I think last year I don't think that boards and committees completely understood what the briefing book was going to look like or what they might submit in terms of backup or background materials. And having gone through one cycle with the briefing book, there's a much better understanding of what can be done with it. So things are going more smoothly this year, and I think it'll be a more robust book. And I'd love to remind citizens that they should bring that book to town meeting with them, because all the long motions that are too long to be read on a slide, anything over 100 words, will be printed in that book, and we will be referring to it. And you can either bring your paper copy or you can download it in advance and bring it on your electronic device to the meeting. And the other thing that we'll be refining this year is electronic voting. We rented a system last year to try it out. The experience was good. Town meeting had a lively debate on whether and how to use it, and it seems to be a settled issue for the foreseeable future, and the town has gone ahead to buy those units, and we'll be operating them this year with less assistance from the vendor and figuring out how we take that in-house and use the electronic voting system.
Is it the same system? So we rented it last year. Did we buy the same tool this year?
We did. We bought the Meridia system, which is used by upwards of 30 town meetings across Massachusetts. And so it'll look familiar to folks, and we're on the road to creating a muscle memory on how to roll out our electronic voting devices and for folks to use them at the meeting.
Do you think it's changed how you manage the room or how residents participate? I don't think did it cut down on time last year?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question because it does actually take a little longer to do an electronic vote than it does to quickly flash up your
Glance across
paper
the room.
voting
Sure.
slip. But the on the other hand, if the vote's too close to call and we have to count it, that takes us 20 minutes. And with the electronic voting, it takes us under a minute.
Yeah, wow.
And there were last year, at least 2, maybe 4, I don't remember exactly how many, but there were many votes that were close that if we hadn't done them by electronic voting, we would have had to count them. So we did, in effect, shorten the meeting by not having to count those votes and instead using the electronic clickers.
I think the flow of it went a little better, too, because I think when you're counting, you kind of you'll hear back in a few articles later what the result was, right? But doing the electronic, it felt like you kind of got the answer a little bit.
Yeah, well, usually what we would do is we stop everything while we're doing the count.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of Maynard. That's what we would do. We kind of you hear back in a few articles.
Yeah, no, we stop everything and do the count, and it was a formal process. We got to close the doors so that you don't have anyone coming or going to confuse the count, and then the tellers go out in pairs, and they have the whole auditorium or the gymnasium divided up into sections, and they both count, they compare their notes, and then each section gives a tally, and then we've got to add them all together in a spreadsheet. So it's a process. And with the electronic voting, it's clearly much simpler. Mm-hmm. The feel of the vote is different.
Yeah.
It's quiet. There isn't rustling.
Right.
It's not a visual experience where you have kind of a physical moment at which the vote is happening because the slips are going in the air. It's a very quiet process that people just have their little clicker and they're pushing a button.
You think it's here to stay? It sounds like a number of towns are going in this direction.
Yes, I think now that the investment is made and people are getting used to it, and it's not unanimously embraced. There are a lot of people who really appreciated that feeling of the moment of a vote. It felt like an event, something was happening, and I think a lot of people liked to see how other people whose opinions they respected were choosing to vote on a particular matter. And certainly there were some folks who said that they had some wonderful conversations with people who voted opposite to them, and it had surprised them. And so they wanted to have a conversation about why they had decided to vote a different way, and that it was, useful.
And now it's a little more personal.
Yes, it's every vote is in fact a secret ballot now. So at least the ones we take with clickers. We'll continue to take some really non-controversial votes just by raising the paper ballots because it is quicker.
Right.
But most of the main motions under articles will be using the electronic clickers for.
So switching gears a little bit, this podcast, we're hoping to do a series and to talk about some of the articles in this format so folks can, you have the public hearings. There's a lot of other opportunities to learn from the materials on the website. The League of Women Voters does a great job having conversation, but hopefully this will add to the medium so that people can hear more about certain articles. I don't think I can do all 54, but we'll try to chip away at a few. And one thing selfishly, now that these hearings have wrapped up, I'm trying to pick the ones that we should do more of a deeper dive on. And I'm curious, what are the articles that you expect will generate the most discussion at town meeting this year?
Well, we have some zoning articles that have piqued community interest. There's Article 35 that will revamp regulations on cell tower sightings, and Article 36 is another one that will adjust the ability of commercial uses to take advantage of joint parking. And then there's Article 34 that will revise regulations on mixed-use developments. On other topics, there's Article 12 that's going to ask for some significant funding for a municipal facilities plan that'll give us a window into what the most pressing capital needs facing the town are, and I think that may be of interest to folks as well. So
those are the ones. Yeah.
Those are the ones, and there's one other I would note is that there's a citizen petition that is filed by the activities club, the activist club, at CCHS.
Oh yeah, I think Sunshine.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and so they have an article urging the town to make available a fee-based composting program. And they've done a wonderful amount of research on the benefits of composting and have a nice presentation put together. And they aren't old enough to vote, but I've given them special permission to present on their article, and the article was filed by citizen petition by 10 voters, and the motion will be made by a voter. But it's really delightful to see that next generation coming forward into the civic process of town meeting and trying to move forward causes that are important to them.
Absolutely. We're happy to have them participate, and they've done a lot of work at the public hearings and going to speak to different committees so far. So
yeah,
we'll get them in to talk about it. What do you think? Do you think there are any articles that residents should spend some extra time preparing for, or just kind of read the briefing book and listen up to some of these kind of articles that you mentioned?
Well, I'd say the zoning articles are worth spending a little time with. They're dense.
Yeah.
So they take a bit, there are a few pages in the briefing book. They take a bit to read. And the planning board has done a really thorough explanation of why they are proposing these changes and recommending them to town meeting, and that'll be in the briefing book as well. It's detailed and in-depth enough that it would be hard to absorb on the fly at the meeting.
That's true.
And so I think it's worth having a look at those in advance.
That's good advice. Yeah, these topics, to just understand them and hear them for the first time in a 10-minute presentation that can be a little bit much. So definitely worth researching that a little bit more. In the past, I think you, as a moderator, have sometimes scheduled certain articles at specific times. Last year, there was a zoning article, I believe, and I think maybe the roads program vote. Or do you anticipate that happening again this year? Are there any articles that will have a special time?
Not this year. We do have some articles, as I mentioned, that I think we'll have an engaged discussion on, but it's all within a normal. It's all within a normal range.
When you do decide to schedule an article, what goes into that decision?
Well, first of all, pre-scheduling an article to be taken up at a particular time is the exception rather than the rule, because we really want to protect the expectations of voters by working with the presumption that we're going to take up the articles in the warrant in the order in which they appear. But sometimes we do have something that has overwhelming community interest. Be large turnouts at committee meetings and hearings, lots of letters in the Concord Bridge, lawn signs, mailings. And when something is commanding that level of interest and focus in the community, and you know that not everyone can get there every night of town meeting, then it seems appropriate to pick a time so that everyone knows when that very keenly focused on article will be taken up by the meeting. And that's, so it's a little bit of it's really based on a kind of a awareness of how the whole community is reacting to an issue. So it's not just what happens at the hearings, but really what's happening more broadly in the community.
And so town meeting is going to be located at the Concord Carlisle Regional High School, and there will be at least 2 or 3 nights for certain.
For certain.
Okay, 3 nights.
3 nights.
Yeah. Okay,
for
3
sure.
nights. Just trying to double check here. Starting on April 27th, but I think this year there was some discussion about looking at different locations. Can you walk us through how that conversation unfolded?
Sure. Well, we had a new venue come online this year, the Ellen Garrison Building at the Concord Middle School, and it really made sense to evaluate it as a possible location. In addition to checking out whether it would be a better venue for us in terms of how it works, it's a brand new building that the community paid $100 million for, and it would have been
nice.
magnificent to give people an opportunity to experience it if they don't have kids in school or haven't had a chance to be there. Voters who remember attending town meeting at the old CCHS have really missed some aspects of that venue. The auditorium in that building had a gently sloped floor. So that it was real easy for us to hold the main session of the meeting in there, and people could move around easily, the nice center aisle and so forth. The current CCHS has a very, very steep auditorium, and it's difficult for people to move around within the auditorium to get to a microphone if they want to. And we used to use the cafeteria, which was a separate room in the old building, allowed us to close the doors. And there was a huge cadre of people who would always attend in the cafeteria where they could eat pizza at their table. Kids could come with them and do their homework. They could read the newspaper, spread out their knitting, and they could come and sit with the same group of friends at town meeting that they usually sat with. And, we lost that in the new building because it's not configured in a way to allow us to do that. And in fact, the Ellen Garrison building would have given us all that back. The auditorium is lovely and easy to move around in. The cafeteria would have allowed us a separate space for people to revive that tradition of sitting at tables with their friends and neighbors and bringing their kids to do homework. And there was a gymnasium that would have been perfectly useful for additional overflow if we had a really big meeting. And all those 3 spaces were closely grouped together to make it easy to move around. And in addition, the building is all pre-wired for MMN,
the technology,
for the technology and so forth, and we would have had to rent a lot less in order to use the space, and likely would have had better connections than what we do by cobbling it together with rental stuff. What proved to be an insurmountable obstacle was parking.
Okay.
And we had public safety come over and look at the building with us as a group, and everyone agreed that the space was magnificent and would have worked wonderfully, but that there was not a good parking solution. And the police department in particular recommended strongly against using that as a space and staying at CCHS, where we've got ample parking and satellite parking not too far away at the Alcott School. So disappointing. Disappointing, but the primary consideration is making sure you've got space to accommodate all of the voters who may show up to attend town meeting and the logistics to support it.
Yeah, I think, building on that, participation is the key priority, and
Yes.
making sure people can come. And if parking or logistics are a challenge, then it doesn't make it as easy for people to come. And so, I think when we're looking at making town meeting more accessible, what supports are in place this year? I think typically we have childcare available.
We do. We have childcare that will be available. It'll be in one of the smaller gyms at the at the high school. So it'll be appropriate for smaller kids who want to run around, to play a game, and recreation department staff will be there. The cost is reasonable for one child and a discount for additional children in the same family. They do ask folks to sign up in advance, but you can come and drop in if you wish. And then for older kids who are doing homework, the library is open at the high school, and the cafeteria has tables. And so parents who don't want to leave a slightly older kid who's doing homework at home, they can find a spot to work at the high school. And then we have other accessibility accommodations. For those who are hearing impaired, we do have hearing assistance devices, a couple of varieties available. We'll also have live closed captioning available in the gymnasium. It's only in the gymnasium, and to take advantage of that, it's a good idea to take a seat closer to the front of the gym, because the screen is a little hard to read from the rear of the gym. Also, for the second year, we'll have some wheelchairs and some walkers available, courtesy the Council on Aging, for those who find walking the long distances from the parking lot or to the restroom challenging. Finally, I should mention that anyone who has a disability that prevents them from actually attending town meeting in person can make special arrangements to participate and vote by Zoom. And if they need that accommodation, they should contact me or Jessica Porter, the assistant town manager.
Okay, great. That's helpful. So this will be your 10th year as moderator, but you've likely been participating for longer in Concord Town Meeting. How long have you lived here?
40 years.
Okay. So you are probably a good person to ask. What makes for a productive and respectful town meeting discussion, especially on potentially more contentious articles?
Well, I think it's most important to remember that we're all members of the same community. Neighbors, fellow taxpayers, everybody deserves to be heard. But we need to keep in mind that our decisions impact each other, and that we're going to see each other later at the grocery store. Right. On the other hand, research confirms that an open discussion of dissenting views does produce the best decisions by a group. So disagreement isn't a bad thing. What we need is a fair and respectful process, allowing the space for all voices to be heard. And if we're able to do that, that should allow all of us to accept a town meeting vote, even if it hasn't gone the way we wished.
That makes sense. And going into your last year, how has your approach to moderating changed, or has it changed at all?
No, not at all. Every year I'm striving to balance a full discussion of the issues and an opportunity for everybody who wants to be heard, balanced against the efficient and respectful use of everybody's time. So that's the balance that we work to strike every year.
When you're looking back, what are you most proud of from your time as moderator?
Well, I really love town meeting as an institution, and I have done my best to foster and protect it, but at the same time to try and adapt its processes to address changes in the community and changes in technology. So I think I've done okay.
Yeah, I think you have. I think everyone would agree. Yes, absolutely. And So, Carlin, if you're listening, what advice would you give the next moderator? We can kind of memorialize it here.
Well, I would say stay in touch with your fellow elected town officials and the finance committee. Compare notes with other moderators across the state through the Mass Moderators Association. It's a great support for moderators. Be available to every town official or voter with a town meeting question. Set a respectful and positive tone for town meeting, and solicit and listen to feedback from voters.
Great. And I think as our last plug here, we'll pitch our website on the Town of Concord webpage. We have a number of resources for town meeting. All the accommodations and the childcare is listed there. You can also find the hearing presentations, the briefing book. When will the briefing book be live, do you think?
Probably next week, maybe. It'll go online before it gets to your house.
Okay.
But it'll go online once it goes to the printer, and then it'll take another 10 days or so to get printed and make it through the mail to everyone's
So
house.
early April, it should be online, and look for it in the mail. We'll probably do a news and notices so people will be looking out to make sure they don't recycle it by accident.
For sure. Yes.
So yeah, check out the website. Come to town meeting starting on April 27th at 7 p.m. And we'll be
6:30.
6:30. Thank you.
6:30.
Okay, 6:30. Make sure I'm there on time. And yeah, actually, one question is, I think in the past we've talked about kind of cutoff times for the evening, so people know what to expect. Do you anticipate kind of ending at a certain time, or that's a discussion that kind of happens later?
Well, we moved the meeting start time a half hour earlier from 7 o'clock to 6:30, with the idea that we could go for 3 hours and take up no new business after 9:30 instead of 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Which makes it a little easier for people with babysitters at home, or people who don't enjoy driving at night, or people who just get tired.
Yep.
But we don't have that rule on the last night of town meeting, because if we can finish up in 3 nights by pushing a little bit, we're going to do it rather than come back for a short 4th night.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Carmen. Thank you for your service to the town of Concord over the past 10 years. And thank you for being my first podcast host and kicking off this town meeting series for 2026. So.
Thanks so much. It's such a pleasure.
Great.